Hey, I hope you had a great 4th of July weekend. Celebrating independence, freedom. Reminds me of just how much freedom we have in Christ. That really, because Christ came, he did away with the law, and so a lot of the rules that people in the Old Testament had to live under no longer applied because they have freedom in Christ. And I was saying that sometimes our freedoms could potentially get in the way of someone else's freedom. In 1 Corinthians chapter 8, there's this chapter that Paul writes to the church, and he begins this discussion about food sacrificed to idols. Now, it's an interesting subject because we don't really sacrifice meat and different things to idols. I mean, maybe you had a barbecue this weekend, which more power to you, that was great. But he has this whole conversation, and really it comes down to this. At the very end of it, he says, verse 9, he says, "But you must be careful so that your freedom does not cause others with a weaker conscience to stumble." So it's this idea that he feels free to eat anything he wants while others may not. And in that, there's this challenge of sometimes we have to restrain our freedom in order to love someone else. In fact, he ends by saying this: "I will never eat meat as long as I live. I don't want to cause another believer to stumble." So right there, Paul declares, I'm going to be a vegetarian. For some of you, that's not far enough, maybe vegan, in order to prevent other people from stumbling. But then the next chapter, he goes in this whole section about rights. He's like, but don't we have rights to do what we want? Now, think of a nation where we have the Bill of Rights and we have rights to do whatever we want. Paul actually gives a case. If there's anybody that has a right, it's him to do whatever he wants. I mean, he even goes so far as to say, I actually saw Jesus with my own two eyes. Like, he feels like he has rights to do whatever he wants, but then he says, but I'm willing to lay down those rights if it will help someone else. And in chapter 9, verse 19, he says, "Even though I'm a free man with no master, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ." He goes on in verse 10, he says, "Even though I am not subject to the law, I did this so I could bring Christ to those who are under the law." In verse 22, he really hits it. He says, when I am with those who are weak, I share in their weakness. For I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try and find common ground with everyone, doing anything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share in his blessing. Living in the climate we have right now, with COVID-19 around, with the rules that have been put in place, with having to wear a face mask or not wear a face mask, all these different things. I don't know about you, but I felt at times that someone's trying to take my rights away. Yet I'm reminded today that the instruction from Paul, and I believe are the words of Jesus, that there are moments and times that we need to defer our own rights, our own freedoms, so that we can love others. Now, if you notice, people seem to be on opposite ends of spectrums as far as how far we should go, what rights we should do, and how we should protect one another. And I just believe this is a season that you and I can actually do the best at loving others. That I'm with you, I'll put my mask on, because I don't know where you're at in this scenario. And when you're with me, maybe we'll social distance, maybe we won't. We've got to figure out in this season, how do we love well and be willing to lay down our rights for one another? I hope today that you experience the freedom you have in Christ, but you use that freedom to bring others to Jesus.